Welcome to our new podcast.
We decided it was time that we start a podcast. Long overdue. I kind of have deja vu. I feel like we must have done this in a past life. How long's it been? I think it's been a month or two since the last episode.
Is that the past life? It's the past life.
Well, I was done with the joke.
Oh.
We can keep going though if you want.
No, I was just. It's so long ago. It
yes.
feels like a past life.
Oh yes.
When another past life we had a podcast. You know?
Yes. And I think we only put a couple out in the winter. When we were just like bitching about something on social media, and then you were coming out of your winter depression.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Mark just has low vitamin D. I think every year we treat this like this fucking
Existential depression.
this mystery, and it's just low vitamin D, and it makes it hard to get through the winter.
Yeah. I try to get as much sun as I can still in the winter, but
Wait, dude, I'm remembering a dream right now. Oh my God. I think it's because that conversation we had yesterday about gas station heroin. In my dream, you were asking me to stop at the gas station to pick you up something, but you called it something weird. And then when they handed it to me, it was feel free. And so I called you and I was like, this is feel free. And you got very defensive and you were like, it's not regular feel free. I'm making it into like Jello shooters. And I was like, yeah, but I feel like all this is going to lead back to feel free. And then you were like, don't tell me what to do. And I was like, okay, cool. That's so funny. I just remembered that.
good old feel free days.
And he just
wasn't
needed
my best.
a D2K3. Geez, I do feel like we've become completely different people since we last podcasted. I guess the last 6 months, we just hit the 6-month anniversary of my dad dying, has been a real wild ride. And also all of the astrology has shifted. So we've got finally fucking Aries and Neptune and Saturn into Aries. I think the aggro part of it has passed. I love this energy compared to all the heavy energy we've had for the last few years. Uranus going into Gemini is already really moving things for both of us, but especially Mark, I guess, because you've got your Chiron there.
Yeah.
And your moon. So, yeah, I definitely... The longer I talk into microphones, the more I find that when there's a shift happening, I don't necessarily want to immortalize those moments on the internet.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because it's like we change our minds a lot anyway, but in those shifts, I feel like there are revelations or opinions or moods that are very transient, and it feels very wet-winged butterfly, and it's like I don't necessarily need everyone to witness that and have it be there forever, when it's like I'm not even going to feel that way in 2 weeks, you know.
And it kind of, I mean, it messes when you put like a flag in the ground on you're making a statement. It makes it difficult to like then move forward or change.
Yeah.
If it's transient at some point, you kind of, it doesn't need to, but it can make you like not as malleable to just like be moving and changing.
Yeah.
And I think it's difficult because I felt like I wanted to still keep podcasting to just like uphold the consistency. But then when I'm really honest, I'm like, I don't really, it's not like it doesn't, I almost want to say it doesn't feel safe to just be talking kind of flippantly in a thing where people are listening and taking inspiration from it or whatever. When you're conscious that like, oh, I'm in a like, I'm morphing and I'm kind of in a chrysalis at the moment. So let me just go offline and not do that to make it easier on myself. And I don't know, it's hard to like, I think it's always of utmost importance to take like your own health and to have that be like the guiding principle in what you're doing. But you know, the culture is so much about like putting pressure on, like you got to stick with it and stay relevant or you're going to lose people. But at the end of the day, it's nice to just kind of not. And I know a lot of people that listen resonate with like, if it's not vibing, just don't do it. You know, we'll wait.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of losing your audience on a consistent basis and finding the
because it's not,
one.
it's like really the important thing is like your own conscious like healing and stuff. And so I think if you're going through that, then just be like, I'm going to put this aside. It'll come back when it comes back, you know?
Yeah. And it's interesting, like with grief, in the early acute grief, I felt comfort processing in the moment. You know what I mean? It made me feel like I was never alone. And then as the grief went on, and it's interesting, I think that different people define grief differently. Like I can still cry, like I do probably still cry almost every day. Just something reminds me of him, or if I see literally anyone else go through grief, like that is right there. And like the more time that passes, the greater the kind of absence is. And that I think probably never goes away. Like I feel like once you lose someone significant in your life, what do they say? Like you just grow around it.
Yeah.
And that part of grief, I don't know. I've just never felt uncomfortable with that. I've never been trying to avoid that. But the kind of funkier parts of grief, the like getting rewired, or the just dysregulation that comes with the shifts to your nervous system, or the numbness, or the like cynicalness, or the fear and the contraction. Do you know what I mean? The parts that show up that aren't, oh, I'm sad about this person. It's like the death of who you were before they died, and now the like acute awareness of the temporal nature of everything, and then the way that increased things that I already kind of deal with, which is this kind of fear motivation, or is it OCD? You know, like the kind of liminal space changes that like I had to undergo in order to process A, the sudden death of someone I was very close to, but B, the sudden death of someone I was very close to right on the back of the wedding. So this thing I've always been kind of weird about, which is that in movies, it's always a beautiful moment right before tragedy hits. Mm-hmm. And so in my life, that pattern, I think that I've mostly gotten from movies, has made it difficult for me to not bring, like, not mentally, I have a lot of control over my mental space, but like nervous system wise, this like other shoe is going to drop kind of feeling when things are good. And then you compound like the sudden loss of a significant person, which for me, I've lost people, but not that close to me yet. Then it felt like everyone was going to die. Like, you know, it's similar after the miscarriage. I would say the miscarriage was different because it happened in my body. But yeah, I don't know. I just very much have been in a transformation that was happening alongside me not having any estrogen in my body. And so I did also finally get on a systemic dose of estrogen, and what a life-changing experience that was. I'd gotten to the point where I couldn't walk. You know what I mean? I could not go for a walk outside of the house because my hip might just stop working. And so, yeah, I don't know if I got on the estrogen before the last episode, but like the brain fog lifted. I can find my words way better. Like at one point I was like, is this across the sleeping phoenix? We're all just going to have dementia. And it's like, no, bitch, you just needed estrogen. And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel so much better. Like I'm, you know, sad. And we'll hold that like sadness and loss and grief and stuff. But for me, the I don't know, I'm Pisces sun and moon. I'm not afraid to be sad, but the loss of the innocence almost around reality that I guess, I'm very privileged to get to 50, almost 50 without really having someone close to me, suddenly die. But anyway, and as I suspected, the shift from, we've been in just like years and years and years of water and earth energy, which is just heavier. Like earth is as dense as it gets, water is emotions. Now we're in air and fire, and we just got here, and I'll take it. I'll take it all day. You know what I mean? I think things are going to get like exponentially more insane, but just being in this kind of like mental passion versus like dense emotion. I mean, there's emotion. It's just like everyone's angry now instead of sad.
Yeah.
And I think we will all start to take things less seriously because it'll feel like you don't have a choice. And I'm already kind of seeing that shift. I'm grateful for what we learned with the dense feelings, but I'm also like, it's enough.
Yeah.
I've had enough of that.
Get the energy moving.
We also put that we redid the house. I finally got an office for the first time. I've never had my own office. I've been doing live streams and podcasts in bedrooms and hallways for 6 years. And so I got an office, and then we got kind of a dedicated podcast space.
Yeah. Yeah, spring's a time for projects for us.
Yeah.
It helps kind of then move the energy.
We're trying to align, the way we move through life with nature as much as possible. So rest in the winter, although the rest does still seem to get pathologized a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it's like rest and healing and kind of like just tuning into the slower parts of reality and processing.
Mark famously good at slowing down.
Yeah. What else is new?
Something I can't stop thinking about consciousness being. We are so influenced by these background frequencies. I'm realizing that like the sensation that I've become a different person so many times in my life, I'm realizing like we are all just being conditioned by the background frequency and then getting to experience new versions of ourselves. And I am a lot of mutable energy, so maybe I just get to experience, I notice like profound changes because I'm just like, as my nature is not to stay the same. I don't know. But Neptune leaving Pisces, Neptune kind of rules like spirituality. That's an overgeneralization. And then Pisces is like as escapist as you can get. And so those two together, 2011, 2012, is when Neptune went into Pisces. Like we got mass spiritual awakening, but we also got mass spiritual psychosis.
Right.
And we got a complete proliferation of the New Age movement. And I'm from Portland, Oregon. Like that's where I spent most of my childhood and adulthood, and that's where I woke up. And so the New Age movement has been around forever, but it was not mainstream by any stretch. And we just saw so much. They also say like Pisces represents Christianity because it's the fish, the Jesus fish or whatever. But religion, spirituality, like these are huge themes of it, and also going way too far.
Right.
And I feel like, and they also say Neptune rules illusion. I think that at the current level of consciousness, I don't personally, I think it rules what the Matrix is focused on. I don't think it means that everything you experience is an illusion, but it can be, right? And so something that, since it's gone into Aries, something that was already happening for me and is also a theme of the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix, but specifically in the last couple of months since Neptune has gotten the fuck out of Pisces, I just am like, I was never a huge fan of the New Age movement, but my spiritual beliefs did still have a good amount of like woo in them. I personally, outside of my first few years of awakening, have just found a lot of the channeling, Arcturian, like ritual, like a lot of that stuff I have found off-putting, or there's something about it that rubs me the wrong way. That's not to say I'm right and they're wrong. But I remember in 2020 hearing, and 2020 I was kind of going through my own second mini awakening, and so I was a lot more open to kind of new age things or whatever. But I remember hearing about like the false light, like psyop or whatever, where the new age movement was actually just a hijacked and I don't know that I believe that it's a whole, I don't know, even the belief that that's a whole plan of the Orion thing or whatever, even that's a little like ugh to me right now. Mm-hmm. Not to say any of these things aren't true or they're not interesting, but something that's really shifted for me in the last couple of years is that consciousness has to be on a foundation of self-awareness, and everything else exists, yes, but everything else minus the self-awareness is very off-putting to me right now.
Well, and I think it can become sketchy, right? Like it might be true and on some level, but not out of balance. Like you can get caught up in the taking it all so literally that it if you don't have the self-awareness, like you get caught in your own kind of labyrinth of your own subconscious, not knowing that that's what you're playing out. And that I agree. I've always had like I've been pushed away by the like new age spiritual thing. I think in the beginning of my awakening, I was all very curious because you're deprogramming a lot of the beliefs, and so you're looking for new ones. So a lot of the spiritual ideas are new and fresh, and you're like, oh, this makes more sense than the old programming. So I'm going to adapt this for a little bit. And sometimes it's wild, extreme, like, oh, I'm raw.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And like I always was on the edge of like I would take that on for a little bit, but then the part of me was always like, is this really like what reality is though? You know, like what I have to go to I'm going to go to these like workshops and stuff, and then I learn how to meditate in front of a bunch of people and do these like rituals and stuff. There was something campy about it to me. But a lot of it felt true, so I just always had like a little bit of an arm's distance with it, and I could never bring myself to go to any like retreat or anything like that because of the campiness. I was like cringy or something.
Yeah.
But in like trying to learn about all the like sacred geometry and different conscious things, a lot of it felt, you know, true on some level and real. But it's like people would take that and go too far with it and their own personal interpretations that then started to rub me wrong. And I do think it's like what you're saying is the self-awareness is the key part of all of it. And then it's kind of like pick and choose what narrative or story you want to play with and that you believe to be something that you want to experience, you know? And that's where I think it starts to get into like, none of it is actually right or wrong. They're all like games to play. Some of them just have like extreme LARPing vibes that I'm like, oh, I don't want to be in that reality.
Right.
I see what you guys are doing, and it feels true, and like I get the mechanics of it and the intention, and it's your personal thing. But at a certain point, like I do think one of the like foundation things of consciousness is this self-awareness and becoming aware that like you get to choose, you get to make whatever reality you want in some sense. There's a collective thing you have to plug into, but that's where I've started to just be with certain people that I have followed for a while, and they start to get really far off in their LARPing. the critical judgmental part of me wants to be like, you guys are dumb. Like you're getting lost in a mirror hall of projections, you know? But then I can understand, I'm like, oh, but I see why you believe it and what you're latching onto as truth. Really at the end of the day, it's just kind of like, oh, I don't want to be in that reality.
That's
so
just,
I'm not gonna, I don't want to partake in it, but I can watch. And, it also helps the temptation to judge and criticize in a way that's kind of saying this is wrong. You know, I always go back to the thing where art is subjective. None of it is right or wrong. It's just a flavor. And I think that applies on a fundamental level to the nature of reality, because it is kind of a big expression art project. And so I like doing it that way, and it keeps me out of the gutter of like rejecting part of the oneness of reality, which is these people just wanting to LARP in a spiritual Arcturian thing, you know?
Yeah.
And I used to think that like I have to find my tribe, I have to find my retreat. Which one do I like? And they were all too hippie or too fucking psychedelic or too LARPy, you know?
I think that retreats and stuff are just extrovert activities, or just like there are social people and then less social people. And then, so I think the process of awakening or whatever for some people means community. Like community also means different things to different people. Like
right.
A community based on the internet where I never meet you in person is a perfect community for me. For me to go to a retreat and try to get something spiritually out of that my nervous system would be way too activated on strangers and trying to navigate social dynamics with strangers, that like it would be very unlikely for me to get anything spiritually out of that, because I don't come out of fight or flight around, you know, strangers. But other people, it's like it's too much or too confusing or whatever for them to do that alone at home, you know? And so I have always just, you know, when I was first waking up, there wasn't social media. I just didn't have access to this stuff. But even back then I would go into like new age shops and resonate with the things there. So I'm not saying the things there aren't true. I'm not saying that, you know, a lot of it's bullshit, but like that's true of everything, but it's true for someone, it's helping someone. It was always this kind of confusing thing where if you just looked at the words that I was saying, it sounds like it's a part of it, but I never knew how to describe it is, but it isn't. I don't know. So I think when I first started waking up, the number one thing I was concerned with was the fact that reality was more supernatural than had ever been presented in scientific materialism. And that, I think, made me, you know, plus aliens. But as I've said before, I don't know. The aliens could just be my own subconscious. Like the aliens, they feel like it's me in the future. And I do absolutely believe that time is not real, that so much of that we are living in some sort of simulation. And then, you know, that like we are these internal beings that are like, I believe all that stuff. All of that stuff is very much real. But when I was first going through an awakening, I was first of all taking everything very literal. I still had the conditioning of good and bad, that there's two boxes that everything goes in. And I still had the conditioning of like absolute truth, right and wrong, and that this should all resonate logically, you know? And so when you only have a couple boxes to put things in, I remember, you know, 25 years ago thinking like, are the government lizards? Or are they people, and now it's like they believe they're people and they probably are also lizards, but they don't know that about themselves because the conscious mind and the subconscious mind are not the same thing. And also these things, they exist on multiple levels.
Right.
And so like, is the soul playing the whatever? And is that a physical one being that is a lizard, or is it they're playing on a frequency of, parasitic energy? Like that's the game they're playing, is like extraction. So because that's extraction, you could put that into the archetype of lizard,
Right.
But like back then I was just taking everything super fucking literal. And then I remember thinking I was being, watched by, there's this sensation when you first start waking up that you feel like you're being watched by them. Do you know what I mean? And now I understand that you tether to things. Like if I decide to get in an argument with the HOA, thank fuck we don't have an HOA. I would never. But like if we decided to get in a fight with the HOA, you're like opening up a server. You're opening up a video game lobby with them and you're going, I'm going to tether to you and then we're going to exchange energy through conflict.
Yeah.
So when I was obsessed, as many people are at some point in their early awakening, with I was tethering to them and playing a game with them. And 25 years later, I understand you can simply open a lobby that doesn't involve them, or open a lobby in which the effect that they have on you is the equivalent of, your neighbor's dog shitting in your yard. It's like annoying, but you don't have to center them in your reality. And so I just didn't have enough categories of reason for those things. So a lot of times when I see people hyper engaged in like disempowering, conspiracy theory stuff to where they're fucking like cortisol through the roof over people they've never met. Or I see people like so ungrounded on the fucking woo thing. I do just often go, it's just a phase. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just a phase. And you almost have to go through that because the creation of categories of reason, I don't know, like that was life experience. I remember finding out that thoughts create reality, which I had been introduced to in Christianity, but I remember finding out that thoughts create reality. And I have like fucking weirdo intrusive thoughts all the time. So it's like, what if I fall off this bridge?
Yeah.
And then this kind of OCD of like, oh, you know what I mean? Or like, what if someone I care about dies? Oh my God, I just murdered my loved one with my thoughts. And, over time you play with that. You realize, oh, why can't I create the things on my vision board, as trial and error, and then just things ground over time. But the awakening that has happened to me in the last 9 years has been self-awareness. It has been, I have become aware of my own subconscious desire to recreate the same melodramas over and over again. Abandonment, poverty, not poverty, lack of many ways, you know what I mean? And like most recently, like health stuff. And I can connect to a part of me that enjoys being the victim and enjoys casting others as villains, that enjoys taking things out of context. Do you know what I mean? That seeks to willfully misunderstand and to willfully be misunderstood, to seek out people that can't show up healthy and try to earn their understanding. I mean, that's something that is just blowing my fucking mind, is this tendency of mine to try to rescue someone else from their own self-imposed victim consciousness, and then to try to make someone who has no desire to understand me, or to try to make someone who is not taking responsibility for their own internal experience try to change their projections of me. And this subconscious belief that if I can just do that, then I will be worthy. Yeah. And through, like I said, this really kicked off in 2017 through learning like my own shit, my own manipulation, my own fear of rejection, my own fear of abandonment, my own need to be understood by every single fucking person, my own nervous system reactions to being misunderstood, realizing I'm autistic, realizing how much of my personality is actually just a series of defense mechanisms, realizing how much of my consciousness goes into managing other people's experience of me, how much of my self-esteem was secretly attached to other people's perception of me. And then also realizing that there's billions of people who are all looking at things differently. Why on stage did I always zero in on the person who didn't like me? And then did that person not like me? Because something else I've learned in the last 9 years is that I will experience someone as glaring at me when they're not. Then learning that reality, and we say this, but like truly having this come into focus, that reality is a reflection of my internal experience. If I have unconscious, internalized capitalism telling me that I'm not trying hard enough, someone will show up in the comments and bitch that I'm not putting out an episode. If I have internalized shame, which I have a lot of, then someone will show up and in the comments and be like, you're bad. I can't believe you don't know that you're bad. And then the fucking life-changing revelation I had a couple months ago, I have a thing with the shame people. The people who are like constantly scanning for you, the cancel culture people, the people that are constantly scanning for you to like morally slip up so that they can show up with zero self-awareness and fucking zero introspection and tell you all the ways in which you're bad and that you should be ashamed. I have had an embarrassing since that really got super huge around the pandemic. I mean, I tanked basically my entire public presence. I started hiding on Patreon. I was self-censoring. I was impossible to fucking do a podcast with. I would edit out anything that you said, that anyone said that could be misconstrued as possibly offensive, with zero regard for whether or not it was context or anything. I started pandering to that group that I can't fucking stand, by the way. And I wouldn't even admit to myself that I couldn't stand them. I was so afraid of them. And not can't stand them as people, but like I can't stand that fucking vibe.
Yeah.
And what happened that made me realize this? I think I was sharing with someone the details of when I was sexually abused for 3 years from the ages of 6 to 9. Did I talk about this on this podcast? I don't think so.
Yeah, maybe.
And I realized in that moment, or no, someone left a fucking nasty comment that had that energy in it. That's what it was. And literally it takes me days, or it did before I had this revelation. It take me days to get that feeling off of me. It makes me feel like I'm going to be burned at the stake. And for a long time, I used to think, oh, this must be like a past life, wound. And then I finally connected that the way that this man got away with basically daily sexual assault of me as a child was the use of shame. And I don't know if that's how he was attempting to get me to keep a secret.
Right.
Or if like that was his process of like justifying what he was doing. But he had this, he was like like high up at a church or something. And like my mom was a drug dealer. And so when he, trigger warning, when he would assault me, he would like be talking the entire time. And he would be like, your mom doesn't wash you. And, you don't get, you smell. And like this kind of like, oh, you're dirty and I'm good. And now you're making me be dirty kind of thing. Same vibe.
So fucked.
Same vibe. And when I realized that fucking moral, like that moral grandstanding punitive fucking thing was a shadow of that like that's what that is, and that's why it puts me into fight or flight. I don't know, we'll see next time we get a nasty comment, but like a fucking piece of my consciousness fucking cracked open, and like so much fear and contraction and hiding, and then also this sensation that I have carried with me my entire life that is like, I am inherently bad and I'm going to be found out for being bad, which I probably am. Do you know what I mean? But like, that's fine. Like, none of us are pure, and I don't mentally have a desire to be pure, and I don't hold other people to that standard. So why I felt, and I was like, oh, you're behaving like the man who assaulted me. And I am not morally aligned with constantly scanning, looking for other people's moral purity. I am morally aligned with everyone needs to introspect, and they need to police themselves if you're going to police someone, and let people grow and let people change and let people make mistakes. And the assumption of bad faith is gross. The constantly scanning for what is gross. And I thought about like everyone I've ever known who is like that is a demon. Like literally everyone I've ever known who's worried about what everyone else is doing is a nightmare to fucking be around. And in 12 step, they call it taking other people's inventory. And it's like understood that when you're worried about what everyone else is doing, like you got a whole bunch of unconscious stuff that you don't understand. And sometimes we just want to get on this podcast and like make fun of things, but then we're also just like, we don't want to, we have something we want to make fun of today, but we're like, I don't
making fun of it to me. I agree. It's like hard to walk this line of like seeing it for what it is, and then, not casting too much judgment, where again, it's this division of a complex part of reality is that it's all connected. And so like when you criticize and kind of make fun of, you do separate,
Yeah.
I think you can still stay conscious in that. And I think that's where sometimes there is a trickster energy that like, I think when we're not on the mic, we are invoking all the time, when you're kind of just poking at a part of reality that is like cringy and campy and all that stuff. And again, it's like an artist that, is a snooty hipster artist that like makes fun of pop music.
Yeah.
Somebody that can do that properly is like, it's just not my thing, and this is why. This is bullshit. This is funny. This is stupid. But if pushed, they'll be like, oh, but writing pop songs is an art form, and people that do it are like, that's really great. It is a thing, And that's kind of where it is. I think when we're making fun of something, it's trying to poke at an obvious like distortion or kind of a funny cringe part of it that has validity to it for that person. And I can see it has validity in the idea of conscious connection or fractality or sacred geometry. Like, I get it, but wow, you're taking this seriously, and look at this like magnificent fucking retreat that you're taking yourself really seriously. And so the jokester like trickster thing is always meant to kind of like poke that.
Yeah.
In a way that can be healthy, that's just poking at it to go, hey,
No, I just want to make fun of things because it's funny. And to me, it doesn't mean, I don't mind getting made fun. I enjoy getting made fun of. Getting made fun of by my partner or my friends is, it's a love language of mine. I grew up in a culture of like busting balls or whatever. It's just, I think in this moment of everything turning into this like moral question, of inherently good or inherently bad or all good or all bad. I just feel like I don't want making fun of something to be interpreted as they're doing it wrong and I'm doing it right.
Yeah.
And also just checking myself, like, is that what I'm saying? Is that what I'm thinking? Because, that's sneaky in there totally, all the time where I'm like, do I think they should be doing something different? No, this is like everything else, the universe expressing itself. Everything can't express itself exactly how I am. Otherwise, I would freak out because I don't feel unique. But yeah, so we're driving the other day and we were talking about, it's time to record another episode and get back on the podcast. And I was like, right now I'm so what happens on the other side of self-awareness, and I'm not saying that I'm 100% self-aware, I'm not saying that at all, but what I've noticed is massive self-awareness has hit the planet. I'm noticing people that you would never, like my definition of consciousness now has like nothing to do with ghosts and fucking aliens and that. That all exists, but that's almost boring to me now. What I'm seeing is people who don't even necessarily believe in those things operating at a level of understanding. I'm talking like the principal of my kids' school, being able to hold the complexity of like intent and impact, and also, you know, like being able to be outside of the is this good, is this bad fucking binary that traps you in the matrix, and rather being like, well, here's the kid's intent, here's the kid's impact, you know, here's the opportunity to learn, here's why punishment doesn't work. And, you know, if I'm aware of my own, how I'm feeling in this moment, the little kids, my grandson and Mark's daughter are 7 and 8. They are, you know, if you've ever had two kids close in age, you know that you just have to get them the exact same present. Like, don't even get them different colors, you know? And so I'm learning that lesson for the second time because I already did this with Phoenix and Lily. But when I was young, and even when Phoenix and Lily were little, and they get a present and one wants the striped and the other one, you know what I mean? They would say, it's not fair. It's not fair, right? And it's not fair as a story, and it's a victim consciousness story. Fairness is a made up concept that can trap you in the mythology, right? I'm realizing that consciousness is awareness, unconsciousness is mythology, getting trapped in stories. Now, I've already been saying this for years. This is what the abundance course was about, but I'm having that experience where I understand it at a much deeper level. These kids say, oh, I'm feeling jealous.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone understands the fucking impact that having a generation be able to clock their own feelings, not weaponize their feelings and make everything, because I feel like that's what happened when we all learned about our feelings. We're like, well, I'm feeling this. You need to do what I said, you know? But it's like these kids are like, oh, I'm feeling jealous. And this awareness out of a 7-year-old that everything that they are experiencing from there is a reflection of their feelings. If these fucking billionaires could identify their feelings, do you know what I mean? If people understood the reason I think I need a bigger house is because I feel inferior to my neighbor, or, you know what I mean? The reason that I am not taking accountability for something I've done is because I feel like I will die if I admit that I was wrong. Like, if that's consciousness, and that's what changes the world, in my opinion, is awareness of what's going on inside of you. And I think this operating from subconscious mythology is what we have done in the dissension for thousands of years. And coming out of that is being aware of your own subconscious experience. But I feel like now, and I've had this ability to some extent since I woke up. This is kind of what I do in sessions. You get on a session, you tell me what you think the deal is, and I can hear the subtext because I'm not emotionally involved. But I've never been able to do this if I have an emotional attachment. But suddenly I'm having these experiences where, I mean, like almost immediately. I had a thing where I picked up Phoenix from school. Phoenix is just learning to like directly ask for things. You know, kind of overcoming his own rejection sensitivity or whatever. And I asked him, or no, I got in the car. I was exhausted from something. We had just gotten back into town or something. And then he said, can we go to the coffee shop? And I said, no, I just don't have space today. And then I started to escalate. And I started people pleasing and fawning, didn't clock it. Started to escalate inside of myself, taking his temperature and like trying to pull him into conversations so that I could figure out if he was mad at me, all unconscious, right? And by the time we made it 5 minutes home, he said something snippy, which typically I do not react to teenage attitude at all because I think it's was just nonsense to engage with that. They're going through hormonal changes. Let them be dysregulated. But I got defensive and this is very out of character for me with them. And then we get to the driveway and Phoenix is like, I feel like you're having a PDA, and we're both tangled in each other's nervous systems. But he's like, I feel like you're having a PDA reaction to my PDA reaction. And I was like able to start to, like, my nervous system was, I wanted to argue. I did for a second try to like explain myself. And then he was just like, I don't know what is going on right now, you know? And I was taking everything he was saying personally. And then, but I was able to clock it in that moment and be like, wow, why am I so dysregulated? And then he got out of the car and I was able to let him get out of the car, where, you know, old versions of me would not let separation happen in that moment, because then I feel like I'm free falling and rejection and I'm unwanted and they hate me and stuff. But I was able to like come in and then like start to run it by you. And within 5 minutes, I was like, oh, I just kind of had a runaway train fawning thing as soon as I said no. What I should have said is, I don't have space today. Do you really need to, you know what I mean? But like the guilt and kind of fawning took off. And then when he wasn't reassuring me, because he was feeling a little rejected, and then he did want to hang out because there was something going on for him, I just started to spin out. And so I was able to go upstairs and apologize and like clear it up like within a half an hour. So it's not instant yet. But 15 years ago, it would have been a fight. It would have been so bad. Not even 15 years ago, 10 years ago, it would have been so bad. And then I would have gotten swept up in the mythology. In that moment, my brain was going, I never get to talk, which is like, you know how like when you get dysregulated and then all of a sudden your brain pulls out this file of shit that you're pissed about, when it's like, I've never thought about
it. It makes no sense.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, that one Tuesday, and it's always and nevers. You never let me, whatever.
And it's almost like I've had that where when I'm saying it, I'm clocking. I'm like, this is horseshit.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
But then I'm sometimes just so attached to like, I got to make my point and clarify, and I can't like stop enough to get out of it, but I can clock that I'm like, what I'm saying is not really a thing.
Yeah. And that took me, I remember that probably 10 years ago, I had finally reached a point of awareness inside my own mind that I could go during an argument, is this, and I never thought about this in my life, and then also begin to clock, this is damaging this trust in this relationship. Because when you pull out a file of offenses on someone you care about, shit I literally have never thought about, right? You make the person you're talking to feel afraid around you, because it's like, well, what do you mean the one time that
how long have you been hanging on to that thing? You say, I always do that. What do you mean? We've had arguments like that in the past where it quickly starts to spiral into like a more serious situation than what the original argument was, because you just unleashed all these other things that apparently you've been holding on to for 5 months. Now I'm like, okay, well, what I have to clock every interaction we've had now, knowing that like you've been thinking that the whole time. It can like really get messy, you know?
And then you feel in that moment, you just want people to fawn.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I used to think that jealousy, I used to try to make my partners jealous, because watching them get jealous would help me realize that I was loved.
Yeah.
Which is so distorted now, but I realized like how warped a lot of my anxious attachment stuff was. I'd fawning and guilt, like learning about fawning was life-changing, because I'm like, when you put someone you care about on the stand, rather than looking at your own internal experience and identifying your feelings, you make them walk on eggshells with you. And there's like a rupture there that I'm looking back and I'm like, I've destroyed relationships. And I've like, I've destroyed like sibling relationships. I've fucked up romantic relationships, a couple friendships. I've been on the receiving end quite a bit in friendships of that type of trying to get your needs met through mythology, and just realizing like, oh, but you can't be bothered to talk to me. It's like, that's a story inside of you that you're projecting onto me because you're assuming bad faith from things that were neutral. And like, we're all just everyone's just walking around doing that. Everyone's walking around in their movie and they're not even aware of their movie. So they think the thing that they're doing, that they're experiencing, is a fact, but most of it is their interpretation of like neutral events. Not always. And then on the other side, hilariously, we are then letting people in our lives who are showing up really unhealthy and are doing damage, and then we're making excuses for them. Do you know what I mean? But it's all our subconscious way of staying in the drama, like staying in the mythology. So I feel like I've woken up to my own mythology in a way that I can now see the mythology of others pretty quickly, and not in a like, I don't know, it has even like given me more compassion, because I'm like, oh, you're just trying to get your needs met, or, oh, you're just, you know what I mean? You're playing out this or whatever. But then it has also like, I'm just like, yeah, I don't want to play mythology games. Like, I don't want to cast characters. I don't want to be casted as a character. I want to be myself. I want to be in awareness, and I want to deal with other people who are aware. I want to deal with people who take radical self-responsibility, period. So if you have like a propensity to get stuck in victim consciousness, or you've not yet reached a place of resiliency to like hold, you know what I mean? Like take accountability. Because I feel like taking accountability and like those are personal things. It's not my job to make you take accountability. I don't like that cop shit. But I don't want to be in relationship with people that can't tell the difference between their internal rejection complex getting projected out. And you know what I mean? And so it's just, I don't know. I feel like I can see this whole wiring under the board of reality that I couldn't see before. I guess I mentally knew it, but I feel like I can, like, it's now like almost instant. Getting close to instant and like running through my veins. And with that awareness, I'm like, oh, that's how you completely bypass the horrors of the Matrix. Because you now have basically, when you become aware of your own shit and take responsibility for your own shit, you can then see it. You can see everyone who's operating out of their subconscious, which I believe is the zombie apocalypse. And so then you basically have the script to their game. And that includes billionaire sociopaths. And so it's like, oh, that's how we will bypass.
Yeah.
There will be a self-awareness. And when I tell you, it's all over. It's right on the other side of just choosing to go in and reflect and introspect and take responsibility for yourself. There is this whole other thing, and the power of someone living on that frequency, untouchable by someone living in mythology and projection.
And that's what I think this is like. I talk about this a lot, where there are these things that are said commonly a lot in New Age circles and conscious circles that for a long time, some of those I like felt like I understood what the concepts were, but then would get just used to the saying, where I would sometimes use the same saying. But I've had to slowly realize over time, sometimes I wasn't really embodying what that was. I maybe understood it with my mind, but I didn't like do the actual inner work and like have the experience of it, where you then have this like inner knowing of it instead of just this like mental concept. And I do think that there's sometimes we can get lost in the seeking and trying to learn like ancient ways of being in reality and conscious stuff that we think is like doing the work or doing the shadow work or like becoming conscious and becoming awake is like, I can recite the entire apocrypha of whatever, you know, like, and none of it doesn't really mean anything unless you're really like practicing some of that stuff. And I think it's funny because it is actually super simple. It's not as complicated as learning sacred geometry or like the electromagnetic nature of the universe. it actually is so simple. It's just this internal game. Even saying that, like, it's not outside, you go inside, is used commonly.
It's cliche, yeah.
It's cliche, and everybody says it going, yeah, you know, you need to go inside. When they themselves have not actually done that, because the game is that advanced. And like, even the idea of, like, your thoughts create your reality. I've known that for a long time. When you have an experience of it and you really adapt and, like, know that, it's so radical, it's actually scary, because you do have that thing where it's like, ooh, I just had a thought that came in my head of when I'm standing next to this bridge, like, what if I jump off? Oh shit, don't get too close, you might jump off. Or I hate this person, and I've in my vitriol anger, I thought of hurting them, and like, oh shit, maybe they're gonna get hurt, you know, and you freak out. And it's there's something that's so radical about this, like, really simple part of consciousness, where you have to, like, realize a lot of things that you're experiencing are in your control, but they're deeply within your subconscious desires that you yourself have not even clocked. That's where the ground level is of, like, all of this radical reality shifting into Utopia 4D. It's like, it's nothing. It's not in the Buddhism books and all of those things. There's information in there that is, like, very helpful and applicable, but at the end of the day, it's just literally going inside and being honest with yourself as almost as some objective observer, so you can actually be okay when you see you've done something wrong, and be like, okay, I have to, it's okay that I did that, I can understand it, and now I can readjust. But that's super scary for people to do, that are always looking for the right answer, or, like, an authority to kind of guide them and tell them, which is what usually gets projected onto the other old scripture books or old Buddhism things. It's like, oh, this is my new authority now, and I do the rituals, I do it this way. And they still avoiding actually going inside. You know, you take on this other character, and that's where this, like, extreme LARPing starts to happen after 5 or 6 years of taking on, this is what reality is actually. It's not capitalistic Christianity, it's Buddhism, and eject from the matrix. And then, you know,
which it is, like, I don't know much about Buddhism, but I feel that all these things are pointing to exactly what we're talking about. And I don't know how I got to where I'm talking, like, do you know what I mean? I can't, it just happened to me. Like, I don't know. I guess I got opportunities to face things that were difficult. And, you know, I had the opportunity at one point to keep relying on my stories and be the victim in every single thing, or I could face the hard thing. And I mean, this was way back in 2019 during my twin flame situationship. I just kind of reached a point where I'm like, okay, I keep having this dynamic over and over again in relationships. Am I going to take the opportunity to acknowledge that I'm the common denominator because that's painful? Or am I going to hit the easy button and just continue to be a victim of things outside of me?
It's definitely the easier button.
It's way easier. And so I had to face this, like, shame. And, like, even that situationship was such a gift, because I was experiencing actual rejection for the first time in my life, where I had, like, I would leave before you could leave me. You know what I mean? I was constantly hypervigilantly scanning at all times for whether or not I was wanted, and such an exhausting way to live. And when I finally was just like, let myself be rejected where tens of thousands of people were watching. Do you know what I mean? Because it was, like, happening live on a podcast. And then I remember in the summer of 2019 having to go back and face that when I learned about anxious attachment, and, you know, the gateway into learning about anxious attachment is, like, anxious people are good and avoidant people are bad. And I was really only learning about it so I could make Aaron see that he was avoidant and bad, and that he actually was in love with me, and all this fucking projection nonsense. And then I eventually reached a point, you know, and the aliens were clutch in this, where it's like, I believed I was the victim because I have anxious attachment. So I perceive rejection where rejection doesn't exist. It's also an ADHD thing. And I did really harmful, unhealthy things to my partners because I believed that I was the victim. And now in 2019, I was finally given this opportunity to feel my feelings, and all this trauma was like pouring out into my consciousness for me to process. And I had to face that, like, there were people who loved me, and, you know, I mistook them having a hobby as abandonment, and I was abusive to them. And the partner that was like the primary victim of this is dead. He committed suicide. And I'm someone who likes to make amends. I'm someone who likes to, you know, I still reach out to my teenage husband every once in a while and go, remember that time I jumped on the hood of your friend's car when you tried to go on a hunting trip? My bad. I think it's just attachment. I'm sorry you didn't get to go on that trip. But like, obviously I can't do this. He's dead. And, yeah, that was an extremely painful era of my life because I had to let my consciousness go back and rewrite all these stories. I mean, I was in my 40s, and it was like, and what a gift and a privilege to be able to do that, because so many people can't. They don't have the, I don't know, the capacity, or maybe it was a manifestation of reaching a point of safety where, you know, whatever it was. A lot of people can't do that just because of capitalism. You know, they don't have fucking time. But it wasn't easy to go like, oh, I'm the villain actually in all these stories. And because I believed I was the victim, I thought I was within my rights to
do what you did,
dehumanize people and seek revenge on them and treat them horribly. People that loved me, you know, what a fucking nightmare to face. But the reward of that was more self-awareness and more self-awareness and more self-awareness. And then after a while, I became less fragile, you know, and
then you actually you end up never doing those things again, you know, creating that harm. And that's the hardest part, I think, for me sometimes, when I've realized retrospectively that I was in the wrong or you know, thought I was right, and actually turns out I was a big part of it and wrong. The scariest part is like, I didn't realize I was hurting someone. Right. I thought I was doing the opposite. And so then when you become aware of it, you immediately, like, you want to never do that again. And part of it is becoming aware of that subtle aspect of the internal world projecting out and changing your reality, that then you can prevent, you stop doing it, you know. And I think that's the biggest, for me, is what made it like, oh, I want to figure this out, because I really don't want to do that again. And it's kind of the only way, is like to have to face that you're part in it and like understand where it came from, you know.
Yeah, what did I say last week? That I now see victim consciousness. So this is not someone who is processing an experience in which they were a victim. This is people with a mythology that they are the victim of circumstance or the victim of other people, and who forego taking personal responsibility for a narrative about why it's not fair. You know what I mean? I now see a person's level of victim consciousness to be equal to their propensity or capacity for evil, is what I said. But that's just because it was, I don't know that I believe in evil, but harm.
Yeah.
And so there used to be something in me that would attract people in victim consciousness and then kind of use their victim consciousness as a place to try to prove my worth or my virtue. And now if you show pretty early on that you struggle to see your own role in things in your life, and all you have is a pile of mythology about how you're not responsible for anything in your life, there's not space for us to have a connection, because that is a frequency, and I will eventually be the story about why your life sucks. Right. You know what I mean? So no thanks. And then, you know, that has just proven true over and over again. The worst things I've ever done to other people, the worst harm I've ever committed, was when I thought I was the victim. And I have been on the receiving end of that as well. Like people very rarely is anyone like the villains we were shown on the Smurfs, you know, where they're hand-wringing villains who are like, they're like, yes, I'm going to get to do harm. That's very rare. It's almost always someone playing out their own mythology in which they have cast you as the villain. You're wearing the guilt or the shame or the whatever shit they can't face in themselves, and then they're going to punish you. And I'm just like, I'm good with people who even believe in punishment, to be honest. I'm good with people who believe that they are the arbiter of justice in other people's lives. I'm good on all of that because it is projected darkness from inside of yourself. And I'm not a mirror for that anymore, nor will I use you as a mirror for that anymore. And there's something like, there's an amazing world that could be built with this level of awareness. And I'm not saying this hierarchically, like I've reached this level of awareness. I believe that this level of awareness is filling the grid as we speak, and it's happening. It is the awakening. The awakening is not, in my opinion, getting the architect
or the Arcturians.
You know what I mean? In my opinion, aliens from outside of us are not going to come save us. Yeah. In my opinion, that's all more disempowered mythology playing at LARPing. I don't know. That's, you know, has its place. But in my opinion, awareness, self-awareness is what the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix is about. And it's happening to all of us. And some people are resisting it for longer. But I can tell you that a world, not even a world full, because a bunch of these people, I don't even know if they're robots or whatever, but even 20% of the world operating at that level of self-awareness and personal responsibility, none of these things would work out. Because if everything that we experience, the government, whatever, I've said this for a long time, is a reflection of our collective internal experience. And you can look at the reflection and see where we're at. You know, we're on our second president with dementia. Like, that's going away, obviously. Now you've got tech guys that are going to try to take over and put you into a fucking matrix grid. But, like, you know what I mean? The technology isn't fucking working. It's... The wheels are falling off of the control system, and radical self-responsibility is very quickly taking over, which is why I have said for years their plans are not going to work. Their plans rely on you staying asleep, and we're just not staying asleep. And when I tell you, it's all over the place. It's not everyone yet, but it's in so many people. Like, I can't fucking believe the level of consciousness that we're running into at like doctors' offices, like in the Matrix.
Yeah, it is very weird. And sometimes, I mean, a lot of that stuff is this, like, when you get those more subtle aspects and you start aligning them and putting them where they actually belong, like, your reality starts to reflect that. And it's hard to say whether like the principal, was he more self-aware because of the timeline we were on when we interacted with him, where it's co-creating between us and him. And so he has the ability to kind of level up. And because we had that meeting and we were there, that's what happened, you know, or whatever. But I agree. It's in weird places, like sometimes at Lowe's or like something where I'm interacting with someone where you just watch a display of more self-awareness than you normally see in those environments specifically. You know, obviously in spiritual circles and people that are on that tip, you can see it more often. But when it's just average people, it becomes clear where it's like, oh, it is just a frequency that's happening. Certain people are going to be more open to it and start to merge into it. And then you're going to have some that are kind of trying to go backwards and deny it, you know, but it's cool. And I mean, I think it's happening everywhere if you look for it. On my live the other night, people were talking about a lot of them seeing a lot of animals doing odd things that are like leveled up awareness, you know, whether it's two species interacting and bonding in a way that you typically don't see, or watching birds and animals like communicate to each other. Or some people were saying like birds were talking to them in a certain way, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that stuff's like always been here, but when the humans collectively start to like hold that frequency more, then everything else starts to do that as well, or whatever came first. I don't know if it's nature doing it first or whatever, but it is interesting to see it start to level out more in other places of the Matrix reality that you would normally think are not having upgrades or something. But
yeah, and then you run into a lot of people who are not conscious and very dissociated and almost like can't keep up with the conversation, and it's just like, okay, just don't tether to that person. You know what I mean? Like, don't open a server with them. Don't open a lobby with it. It's like, don't start a video game with them.
Yeah. I like that, the thing you were saying in the beginning, the like open a different lobby. It's video game talk.
I know.
I can never get over it. It's so applicable. It's just the most, like, reality is the most extremely advanced video game, but it operates in so many of the same ways. Like when we go in, and video games are getting more and more advanced, so like some of these things are becoming even more applicable as metaphors. The way algorithms are like kind of the substrate of some video games and things, but if you understand the algorithm, you can work with the algorithm to have a experience that you like, and so there's, within certain games, you can change your lobby by changing your actions, and then the people that come into that lobby reflect your actions. Is kind of a hack in the video game world that people quickly figure out, But just playing that tape forward, the video game becomes more and more advanced. This is what you get. A game that, like, it's so advanced that you're creating the reality without knowing it, and it is coming from inside of you, and we play out years and years of stories that we're generating, but we have convinced ourselves that we're not. That's an advanced video game that, like, I could see why we would build it at some point, because it ultimately has no authority over it. That's what's so cool about it. And as you do the self-inner work, you literally you start to go like, oh, I get to choose. And there actually is no authority. Even the they that are big, scary, and they're trying to, it doesn't mean anything, because the nature of this game is like, we created a world where you don't have to ever have somebody tell you what to do, and you have to wait for the rules, or you have to wait for the energy. It's just abundant energy constantly flowing. And because we've forgotten that, we've been able to create these sub-matrix, very dense worlds of rules and regulation that you have to try to get out of. It's like we wanted that at some point.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that there actually is no authority on top of all of that. And it's like the original singularity or something created this fucking sub-matrix that just gets to go on infinitely. But, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny when it's like, I have the descending mic stand that just
mine is too, man. It's like droopy.
I see a lot of people online being like, I just want to collaborate with my neighbors and, build community and grow food together and and all these overlords are making me blah, blah. And it's like, we were born into a game about disempowerment. So we were conditioned into disempowerment. We were conditioned into giving our power away. We've had, like, you have to spend a good amount of your life deconditioning that. But if you want to play a different video game, play a different video game, and through that shrink the external power stuff. You know what I mean? There is a power attributed formerly to the government. I don't know if you're still attributing power to a man who's literally shitting his pants and speaking in like nonsenses, but now it's these, albeit very creepy, very sinister, and very supervillain billionaire tech guys. Their plans are not innately going to work. I think the worst part is, I believe that the data centers are for surveillance and that they are building a good amount of them, and any sabotage of that plan I am hugely in support of. But their overall plan of world dominance, it's just not going to work, And if you watch them long enough, they're just all completely zooted out of their brains on cocaine or fucking ketamine. They're not, they're all actually competing with each other. So, them and the Christian nationalists are kind of working together or have been working together, but they're all going to cannibalize each other. But at the end of the day, it's like these people are not powerful, innately powerful people. They have a pile of money. Money's made up. We can at some point decide collectively we don't want to play this game, and we will. But we may very well be on the way to living this life that we all seem to crave, which is just, I want to just take care of myself and my local community. We may achieve that because these idiots are going to fuck things up to the point that we have no choice. But we have to find the part of us that wants there to be a villain to fight. Right. Do you know what I mean? And so that's what I'm saying. They're present, they are fucking things up, but you can shrink their power by finding the part of yourself that longs to have a daddy that's unfair, and that could be an extension of our parents being shitty when we were kids or whatever. But it's we choose the reality we experience by finding the mythology. What mythology do you like? When I was hacking abundance, it was I had to find the part of me that enjoyed. You don't feel like you're enjoying it, but if you're being fucking honest, you're enjoying that enjoyed getting knocked down every time I got up. I would talk about, I'd get back then $100 check would be $1,000 now because the dollar is losing value. But, let's say you get $1,000 check that you weren't expecting to get, and the next day your car needs $900 worth of a repair. Before I started to change my mythology and my stories, that kind of shit would happen to me all the time. And I would be see, I can never get ahead. Every single time I get a little bit of money, something. Now, this happens to me all the time still. I get a chunk of money or I get a little more extra resources. The bill comes right behind it. But now my mythology has changed, which is look at this, dude.
Abundance.
What I need shows up the day before I need it.
It's so funny how that thing it's the same event, but when you look at it from two different ways, they give the exact opposite experience.
Exact opposite. And feel it in your body. Mm-hmm. Feel the two stories. Now, the facts are $1,000 check showed up and a $900 thing. Those are the facts. That's the facts. Then there are the feelings, the emotions that I experience. That can be frustrated, defeated, disappointed, my expectations smashed, whatever. Those are feelings. So those are two objective things. There's the facts of what happened and this. The mythology is the story I tell myself about it.
To bring meaning to it. Yeah.
Right. And the story that you choose, that is the part of reality that you are 100% in charge of always.
And that's the thing. It's so simple, but that's what unlocking that is the door to having your power eternally at utopia. Let's choose what we want to. All of that,
Yeah.
It's right there.
Yeah.
As you build on that is what it eventually becomes.
And there's a real conflation. I know I've said this on this podcast before, but this was something I really woke up to as well. A real conflation between expressing feelings and telling a story. And so something I noticed, I've been through a couple friendship breakups. Something I've noticed in the last couple years is that I get overwhelmed by people's stories. I don't know what you I don't know what you want me to do with the story. It makes me feel bad. It makes me feel like I'm supposed to fix it for you. Sorry, let me change that. I feel like I'm supposed to fix it when someone is telling me a story. But a lot of times, and so historically, I'm not the best friend to have in that because I will try to fix it. You know what I mean? And I just don't have a lot of space for stories. And so over years, I would get people, friends being you never let me vent. I'm not allowed to talk about my feelings. And before I understood feelings, I definitely was, kind of a, I don't know, positive thinking bypass. I don't know. I'm a solutions person. I don't feel comfortable. Victim consciousness is a fucking issue for me. I don't like being there. I actually won't tell you my problems if I don't trust you to fucking pull me out of it. So if I start saying that dumb shit, I want to be pulled out of it, even if I resist being pulled out of it. So I always feel like I'm being a good friend by like pep talking you out of it. Cause it's like, what are you going to do there? Do you know what I mean? Then you hit the nightmare button and next thing you know, the algorithm's like, oh, you want a reason to cry? I'll give you a reason to cry. So like I equate being in that space of narrative as dangerous because the algorithm, you click on enough videos of farts, dude, your whole algorithm's going to be farts. Ask Mark, because it happens all the time when I'm laying in the bed next to him.
Always at night. I was just
always at night. The fart algorithm activates. And so I don't like to sit in a pity party because I don't want the algorithm to be like, oh, this is where you're paying attention. So anyway, I would internalize these accusations that I don't let people talk about their feelings when I didn't understand feelings. And then when I came to understand feelings, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I think there's a misunderstanding. Everyone always fucks me over and no one gives a shit about me and I'm too much and I'm in the way is not a feeling. None of these things are a feeling. Feelings are inside and they're not facts. Feelings are, I feel unwanted. I feel like a burden. I feel, and so-and-so didn't text me back. That's the fact. I felt embarrassed about the vulnerable text I sent before they didn't text me back. Also fact. You are not unwanted or, you know what I mean? Like they don't think you're embarrassing. Like those two, like your feelings are a fact for you. And then the objective neutral event. And then the big old fucking sloppy ass story you're slapping on top of it so that you can masturbate in your own victim consciousness is that it's a story. And I've done a lot of this. So I'm not saying this is like something that happens outside of me, but that's not a feeling. Do you know what I mean? And so then I have traced this back to Mother does this where she's like, you're blah, 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 like telling me what to do. And then when I'm like, nah, then she's like, oh, so I can't express my feelings. I'm like, well, you have to call me every week. It's not a feeling, actually. But I don't remember why I was on that. Oh yeah. But like that, the story is made up always. It is the meaning that we attribute to it. It is not a fact, especially when it involves other people. And changing our stories changes our algorithm because it's what we're engaging with, So shit happens. People die, people break up, people don't want to be your friend anymore. You lose money, things catch on fire, things flood, like things happen. The story, in the short term and in the long term is what creates reality. And when we find ourselves subconsciously addicted to catastrophizing, then the algorithm assumes that this is the game that you enjoy playing and gives you plenty of reasons to catastrophize, which is this kind of nightmare button thing I've figured out about reality where when I indulge too much in victim narratives, it's like I put my coffee cup down on the nightmare button and next thing you know, the book of Job is playing out in my life and I'm covered in fucking boils and do you know what I mean? Everything breaks at once and nobody wants to be my friend anymore. And so these are the mechanics of the matrix that have come into focus for me over the course of the last 25 years. And it is supernatural.
It's 100% supernatural. And I think it's so funny. It's so easy to overlook because it is so goddamn simple. And there's so many other little ways to explain this stuff that are just sub mythologies to get trapped in. But the thing that's so profound to me is that there's always been this thing, like Joseph Campbell always talked about it, like the hero's journey, and a lot of older poets and stuff really understood this idea that like humans seem to be like their power is they're story makers. They're like, and this is also in the idea of like, we're all creator beings. What do we create? We create stories with a bunch of data and experiences. Why do we do that? Because we're trying to make meaning of something. And it's beautiful because you can just tell stories on anything. Like you collect a couple different data points and you can rearrange these data points in so many different ways and tell different stories within it. And therefore you derive different kinds of meaning out of like material experiences or data points. And so by telling a story, you then get this meaning after it. And depending on how you combine the data points and what kind of story you tell, gives you a different meaning. And I think we're all so curious and after, like, what is the point of this in life? And we forget that that's what we're actually after, but that's what's behind the desire to become famous or make money or whatever. It's like, I'm here, like, what is the point? Oh, it's to make a bunch of money because that feels really good. Oh, it's to get famous because, like, everybody, like, that feels really good. So meaning. But the power behind it is, like, you are the meaning maker and you get to choose the story. It's not just happening to you. And I think that's where we're all caught off, is like, we're creating the stories based on, like, what happens that we have no control over. So here's all the data points. Okay, my mind is looking for a pattern. Oh, here's the pattern. Yeah, I feel this way and I'm a victim and this keeps happening. There's the story. And you don't realize that you're creating it in the moment because you think it's happening. And so then you're just trying, oh, here's the pattern. And obviously this is what's occurring because it's been happening for 20 years. And that's just such a trick. And it's so hard to get a hold of that desire when a bunch of patterns happen or a bunch of data experiences occur. Really, at its nature, it's neutral. But if you left it neutral and didn't make meaning of it, it's just chaos. It's all randomness.
Yeah.
So your mind is like, before you're even aware of it, it's creating a story. So you stay grounded in the reality and you're here. And being able to catch that before you generate the story and check yourself and your emotions and all of those things with your self-awareness, then go, okay, here's the story that I would like to make out of that. And it's the power behind so many, like, poets and people that have gone through experiences where they pull meaning out of it. It's that. It's literally just like, you have to have meaning. You have to have, like, a purpose to be here. And that meaning comes from whatever story you want to generate. And you can, I mean, there's just so many great examples of, like, if your house burns down, the immediate thing everybody wants to do is be, like, sad and, oh shit, like, I'm fucked now. And the thing you could do is go, oh, interesting. Like, I guess I wasn't supposed to have that house because something's coming that's bad and that I didn't want. And so it's allowing me the opportunity to, change up the reality, get a new house, or maybe I'm supposed to live in a van, whatever it is, that you can look at it and choose to make the story something that you would like to experience. Even if it logically isn't lining up, the story's first, the internal, like, narrative, all of that stuff's first. So it will play out, sometimes in a delayed fashion of a couple days.
Yeah, well, it's just like, I would be devastated if this house burned down. And, until very recently, I don't know if I had a house fire in a past life or whatever, but I've been preoccupied with house burning down. When I was little, I used to ask what I guess was the aliens, but whoever these, like, beings in the stars that I talked to play Who Could It Be Knocking at My Door on this tiny radio if my house was about to burn down. So it's a thing that I've thought about. And I've just never felt very attached to anything. So I've always just been like, yeah, whatever, as long as everyone survived, But I think about it now and I'm like, yeah, it would be, like, really sad. It'd be really fucked up. I love this house. I have things in it that are important to me and important to the kids and important to you. And we would lose a lot. And it would probably be a pretty intense amount of grief, that I would have to work through. My story about it wouldn't change. Like, my worldview does not go out the window the second the going gets tough. And that's one thing that I've learned through a lot of hardship is I do not abandon my worldview when things are difficult. These two things can exist at the same time. I can be deeply grieving my father and also know that he went exactly when he was supposed to go and that everything is exactly how it was supposed to be. If it was supposed to be different, it would be different. And if I was supposed to continue to live in a house that had burned down, the house wouldn't have burned down. And so that doesn't end the grief. But it does prevent a lot of mental fucking fuckery that, like, I've not experienced a lot of that with losing my dad. And, like, I know now through enough life experience that even if I lost a child or lost a partner, like those would be horrible, fucking extremely painful losses. But I know that my worldview would not go out the window, maybe for a day, you know what I mean? But like that my trust that whatever I am experiencing, my soul decided to experience is like unwavering.
And that's the thing that I think keeps you in a more neutral space, which allows more control over those stories.
Right.
But it is like the emotions are kind of separate from the stories. The stories create the emotions. So they're not separate. Like I can still feel sad about the house burning down, but not get pulled into poor me victim story that then starts to create, well, now I never find a house. Now there's nothing positive. But if you can hold both and go, shit, this is really sad, I'm going to have to grieve for a day. But the story that I'm choosing is like, this is for some purpose and reason. I'm going to figure that out as I go. Keeps you neutral and doesn't pull you into creating reality that goes along with this victim story. And I think that's a subtle game to feel the emotion, but not get pulled in to like be uncontrollable of it, you know?
Right. Well, it's, you know, because what it does is, yeah, you engage a lot of attention in a perspective that then reality will start to load in that perspective. And, you know, I also just live in a consistent state of like semi-grief of nothing lasts. So this beautiful moment that I'm having right here, but I understand this relationship might not stay the same. You know what I mean? I might not have my health always. I might not, you know, like things change. And so when they do change, it's not quite
disruption. Yeah.
The older I get, the less I can like really hang out too much in the fantasy that things will never change. But yeah, I think when I was younger and had less categories of reason, I would conflate feelings with the worldview thing. And so I might not let myself grieve the loss out of fear that grieving the loss itself was victim
pulling
consciousness.
The timeline, yeah.
And so that is like an area of maturity that has really shifted since 2018, 2019, as I started to understand my own emotional experience and stop mentalizing everything, which is what I get when I was like hanging out with someone the other day who has that like positive vibes only positive thought thing. And when I try to talk about feelings, she was like, oh, I don't think about the past ever. And I was like, oh, I used to be like that. Like I used to think, well, if I was supposed to have this house, I would still have this house. And it's like, also it's a loss. Like also you're going to miss it. Like also it's sad. And those feelings aren't a story. Right. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying there's no use in building anything because it all just gets ripped away from you. That's a story. I loved that house and it's gone, and I feel a loss is a feeling. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And so this is what I mean when I say like having 7-year-olds be able to clock jealousy, which is envy, I think is what they're trying to articulate. But if we could all identify our own envy, our relationships, capitalism would fall. Like so many things would change because jealousy and envy are a couple emotions that we have a lot of shame about. It's really embarrassing to have those things. Yeah. And so it was something I noticed in like stand-up comedy. People could never, which I dreamt about also, people could never, like I can't even imagine a world in which comedians could clock their own envy. But anytime someone would get like a late night spot or something, everybody would get together and tear the person to shreds and like character assassinate them and why they're not good enough and how they stole so-and-so's joke and whatever. And it's like, it was always so obvious to me that it was just, this is like such a weird writhing pile of envy right now that nobody can identify. Yeah. And it makes people be shitty. Like I watched someone now very famous get canceled, their cancellation campaign planned in a private Facebook chat. I watched it get planned. And zero self-awareness that it was being planned because people were envious. It was like, he doesn't deserve this. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, yeah, you can find a reason to get them canceled. I guess canceling people, by the way, does make them famous, but do your thing. That's the karma, for what you're putting out into the universe. But like, zero self-awareness of the envy.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I've done. I remember yelling at Aaron once for not being committed to our work, but I was actually just jealous because he was going on a date with someone else. So
jealousy and envy are nasty. Dude.
They're nasty, but they're human, and they should not be pushed into our subconscious, because that's where they really.
That's what I mean. That's where they're nasty. Like, yeah. I agree. It's normal, and I've felt it a lot, but I just remember in the band, envy kind of kicking in pretty early on, and it becoming a thing that I clocked and I was aware of, but like tried to keep out of it affecting me, and it did kind of go into the subconscious. And I remember realizing as we went on that I was like, man, this is why like some bands don't make it, is all the money making in music is so fucked up. So there's always like certain people making way more money because they wrote a top line or they wrote most of it. And then everybody else is getting like fucking pennies compared to it. And all of those things that as I was going into it, I was like, that's not going to bother me. I'm here for the art. I'm here for the bros and the bro hang and the like, we're bonding and making great art. But it started to get in my ear, and start to make me like, because I could see the finances coming to some people more than others, that I was like, oh, well, that you get to go on this vacation now, or you get to buy a house, and like I don't get to. And what does that mean with I'm working just as hard as you are, but like you're making you have the opportunity to make you just get into all these fucking narratives that make it weird every time you're trying to then go make art or just be friends. And I noticed that the bands that they kept like all of the finances is like it comes to us as a band, we split everything evenly. And it's controversial because sometimes in some bands there's like one person writing and everybody else is just playing what they tell. And so I get it. But on the longevity and like stability of the band and the people as individuals, having it be like just equal across the board gets rid of anything that would come up that's jealousy and envy that you can't manage in some other way. And I started looking into it. Most bands that had like rode, massive success and fame and then come down and like gotten up again and have long careers, almost every single one of them had split publishing, split finances across the board.
Wow. And
they were all stable and like could still be a band together because of that. Other bands that have had gnarly breakups and like have fallen apart after a couple years, usually there's like finances are all individualized, and there were people making way more money than others. And it fucks up both sides. The people that are making more money and know that the other people aren't, if they're not working hard, whoever's not working hard enough now is like, there's a big deal behind it because I'm making more money and you're not sure.
So they're defensive. Yeah.
Yeah. And as far as like having a place to be able to make art and connect in that subtle creative space with the muse, you can't do it when you're doing that kind of thing.
Yep.
Because now it's in the room where like I'm wanting to grab the best part instead of you because you're already making money. I need a cut now. Like let me get and it's like, but I don't have the idea. And maybe you're connected and channeling something right now, and I'm gonna poo-poo it because I want the money. It's not because that's the best idea. It's like I fucking hated that shit. But it's hard because the business, I get it. It's structured that way, and it is fair in some ways.
Well, I mean, capitalism is such a
it creates all of it,
externalization of our unconscious competition with each other and separation consciousness. And I got to get more than you got to get, but then it's not fair when I'm not the one who has more.
One other, I'm just going to mention it because it's such a good example of that narrative, creating your own story. The Viktor Frankl book, I think is his name, Man's Search for Meaning. I read that a long time ago, like before my awakening, and it was so profound. Just a guy that like it was in the Holocaust and wrote this book kind of during it and as he came out of it. And Man's Search for Meaning, the thing that he was connecting is that most people that didn't survive that were people that lost so much hope, and they could not keep meaning in their life by understanding the experience they were having, and being able to put a story around it that like made them feel okay. And I just can't imagine. I mean, in such a atrocious experience in reality, it would be very difficult to not create that story that is awful. But he watched, and it's such a good book because he really was able to like somehow stay conscious in all of it and write that stuff down. And him and a couple other people were the only people that survived like in his little group, because at some point he figured out we need to make a story. Like we have to make meaning of this, or we're all going down, you know? And so the way he unpacks it, it is a very, it's applicable to this, and it's good because it shows you how like he could spin a positive story on that, you know, on being in a concentration camp for however long.
Wow.
He was able to spin a positive story of it and survive it and make it out, you know. And he watched so many people lose hope and slowly degrade because they could not create a story that had meaning to what they were going through, you know, that didn't involve them just giving up, you know.
Damn.
It's really good.
Yeah. It's so true though. And then now I think there is that existential like threshold you have to go through as you read this shit that, what's a fucking word I'm looking for? Melancholy of realizing that there is no inherent meaning. Then almost
liminal space
makes you feel silly in creating meaning. And then that can pull you down into like a really like liminal space. So learning there is no meaning, yay, you know, and I get to create meaning. And I think I want to go to the bathroom and make a cup of tea. But last night, and I don't know if you want to talk about this, but last night you were playing a song for me that you made, and the meaning in our lives, like we both have like what our little souls came here to accomplish. You know, I came here to understand love and connection while remaining an individual. And you are, as your Patreon says, working out Chiron in Gemini. And so you're finding your voice. And so we're just kind of having this moment last night where I got choked up and was just thinking about how magic it is to be able to share, I don't know, like to just work through what your soul came here to work through without this belief that it needs to be something that the entire world witnesses, or it needs to be seen as objectively like successful. You and I talk about all the time, like when we now see people from our past, I'm like, no, I quit comedy. And it's like, I'm not even going to bother explaining that I'm the most successful I've ever been because I'm doing everything I ever dreamed of doing. Do you know what I mean? Which is just like, I talk about my special interests for a living, and, you know, I have a small audience of people who really understand me. And that's like all you know, all I could ever hope for, but that's not the societal metric of success. And it's just something that has really changed for me since Pluto left Capricorn. Any conditioning that I had around success is something that other people recognize as success is just like, I don't know. For me, I'm just like, I live my dream life and no one knows about it. And it's great, you know? And then I get to share it with you. And so you know what a big deal it is for me to identify shame that helps me stop hiding, you know, self-censoring.
Mm-hmm.
You know what a big deal it is to me and my soul that I learn to be honest and authentic in every moment and not fear retribution or whatever, right? And so when I have these victories, like you get to see them, and that's amazing that we have a partnership and we get to do that. But even if it was just me, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I now see my life experiences through kind of the soul lens. I mean, I guess I have for a long time, but I see it more clearly. But last night I just got choked up thinking like how beautiful love is, that I just get to be the person that you call downstairs to see when you've made a stride in working towards overcoming something or finding your voice or whatever. I don't want to step on your story, but, and how that's really the meaning. Like, it's so small now. It was so big when I was younger. It was like fame and accomplishment and money and all these things. And now it's so small. And it's like you could take away so many things, so many comforts and stuff now, and it would still be this, for me. And that's after going through all of this. I'm also in my Chiron return, so I'm having a lot of like, I'm really having this kind of like, I don't know, second midlife, not crisis, but this kind of like shift, this menopausal shift into like the wisdom part of my life where, so anyway, I think I want to get a hot beverage, but do you want to put a pin in it there, or I don't want to, did you want to say something about that?
I mean, I'm not trying to be like necessarily super secretive about it. I mean, I think what's cool about it to me, and even when I was like wanting to share something with you like that, like I share music with you all the time, but I've gotten more tuned into just what happens when you share an idea and any kind of art that's like only right now and nobody else knows. That when you share it, like it all kind of changes after that. And so I a lot of times don't share things because I have noticed that it changes my like relationship with it. But what's really cool, just as like anybody that's an artist, but like if you're just creating something, there's these moments where while you're creating, but especially like right as you finish it, there's an awareness that I get into sometimes. I'm like, I'm the only one that knows this is here. Like nobody else has heard this yet. And I've been listening to it over and over again. I know this thing so intimately. It's as if it's everywhere. Everybody knows about this song, right? That's like kind of what it feels like inside because you're so close to it. But there's this just beautiful thing that we're like, when it's just you and the thing and you haven't shared it, it's so unique and like it's so special in that one moment that like this, it hasn't really burst out yet, but it is. It's like here. And I can hear it, and I'm the only one that's ever heard it in the entire world. And when you go share it with that one person, like you never can have that again. It's all over. That part is over. And so it's on one level, it's like one thing I've learned that's actually, it's a dangerous trap. You start to just keep things to yourself and you never share them. And that's selfish in a way. And it's kind of, especially if you channeled it through the universe gave that to you for a fractal reality, for it to exist in a fractal reality. So you have to move it out of you. You have to make it and put it out. Like that's literally all you have to do. But for me, the thing, I wanted to keep it and protect it because it's I don't know. It's like, it's more unique that way. Once it's out, like, okay, now everybody can hear it. And so I get why I wanted to, but it has created this stagnation. And in a weird way, I've seen it as like kind of, I'm not trustworthy of channeled information if I don't put it out. What is it for? Just me? Okay, cool. Like you can do that. Music is just for you. It's healing. Great. But so I've become more like conscious of sharing and when I do it and why and how and who. And, yeah, it's really cool to have a trusted like partner that I can share that vulnerably. And you also know all the meaning and the stories that are behind it, which make it actually more special in a certain way. And so it's like sharing it with you is like a good, nice, like mirror reflection because you get all of the story and I can see that play out. And it's a nice, like safe buffer for me to, practice the Chiron and Gemini thing and all that goes with that. But yeah, it's, I also think some of these things like the hyper awareness I have on releasing music and the like making art alone. And it is this one thing before you release it, like are all true in some senses. Like I'm just observing it as I'm going, but they're also can get wrapped up in my narrative of why I shouldn't release music, you know?
Yeah.
Like that whole idea is a beautiful idea. It's like, before you release it, it's like nobody's heard it. It's only yours. And it's like, you're the only one that knows. That's cool to be on the earth and be like, I'm the only one that knows this is here. But there's a part of it where I'm stating that over and over again in my mind. So I don't have to take the burden of releasing it and all that comes with that.
Right.
And I'm not afraid of failure. I'm not afraid of it, nobody liking it. Like I fundamentally understand all that stuff. There's something about that when you release it out into the world, it changes. The thing changes now, and my version of it, my opinions of it are going to kind of change and go over time. And so it just,
I also feel like you have a thing about not wanting things to be done.
Well, and again, that's an obsession with, it's the obsession with the creation process in general, never wanting it to stop, which in many ways it just doesn't. This is like infinite existence. Like we're always doing that. So why am I so obsessed with like rejecting the like universe saying this is done, you feel good about it, you're so excited, like you're imagining letting it go. But then the other part that's just like, no, but then that means it's done. And in my head, I'm like, there's a million different ways I could do this. So I could also sing this way over it. Or, what's cool though, let me extend it more. And if I ever stop, I always know like, well, I can come back and make it different. So like, I get it. That's like, there's a point to do that. But also there's just a thing where you can get stagnant and never. The point of art, I do believe, is multifaceted. But one of the most important things, especially with like, if you're conscious and you're channeling through like a really authentic lens, is to make something your specific, unique, individual way and share it. Like that's why we're in the reality we're in, and it's fractal. It's why nature does its thing. It's like the bird is birding all the time, and that's why squirrels can squirrel, And so if I'm not like doing my thing and sharing it, then like what is the point here? It's not. It is kind of a selfish thing, oddly. So, yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know, for whatever the astrology is right now, or if I'm just finally getting over the hoarding my shit, or if I'm finally getting the balls to just, like, use my voice. But it feels just way freer and open, and I think over the last week, I definitely hit a different space in my discovery of more of my authentic self that is really fun to share with you for the first time, because it's new to me and I'm excited, but I am also terrified. And so it's fun to share it with you because I know I don't have to be as terrified.
Can we put it at the end of this episode?
Yeah, I think we can either the beginning or the end, maybe the end, I guess.
All right. Well, why don't we just wrap up, because this is already long. Yeah.
Next week will be Gossip Corner.
Yeah, we'll be back to gossip. It was just so much. We still have so much to talk about. Mark has sessions. I did a stand-up comedy thing last year. If you guys remember me going on tour for 2 weeks in 2025, that was for... why do I feel like we talked about this already? But so where I started in stand-up that started me podcasting was I did This Is Not Happening, which was, when I was a comedian, my highest comedy aspiration, because it was a long-form storytelling show, which matched the kind of comedy that I liked to do. There wasn't a lot of spaces that made sense with my comedy. I was not a good showcase comic, which is like the 10 minutes or whatever. I'm terrible at crowd work because I have delayed processing. So long, pre-written long form stories was my thing. And Comedy Central did some fuckery and the show got canceled right after I filmed. And so there was one more story that I had hoped to go on that show that obviously couldn't, because the show was gone. And when the pandemic hit and I got Lyme disease and got kind of ripped off the comedy timeline, I was working on a special called Dead Birds that had several stories, but had this story about me and the dead owl that many of you have already heard on podcasts or whatever. So anyway, many years later, they decided to do one last season of that show. Ari Shaffir, the original creator of that show, lost that show to Comedy Central over some dumb shit. And so this was him doing his final season, because the season that I filmed, Roy Wood Jr. was the host, because they had just taken that show from Ari. And I was invited to come do the story on there, and I, haven't done stand-up in years. I did a stand-up for like a week, I think in 2022 for some reason, 2023. But other than that, I stopped doing stand-up at the beginning of the pandemic, and it is definitely, I don't know, in some ways it was riding a horse, in other ways I had to take beta blockers to get through it. So it's not my favorite. If I would have had 6 months to get it ready, I could have made something I was as proud of as Meth P. But for what I had, it was pretty good for the amount of time I had to get ready, and, just like coming out of my house. And I think it was, for me and my personal journey, just extremely important for me to go back and sit in green rooms with comics and stuff to be like, this is a dead timeline, because I got kind of ripped off that timeline by Lyme disease and then just felt like I couldn't go back. I needed to go back and confirm that I absolutely have no desire to do this art form anymore, and that comedy was always a gateway drug to podcasting. Should have never let me find out that microphones exist inside your house, because you're never going to get me on stage again. Anyway, it is currently on. You can go to my website, and it's called The End, is what because Comedy Central owns the name. And it is currently on Your Mom's House, being hosted on Your Mom's House. One thing I will say about these guys, and if you hate these comedians, then don't buy it. You know what I mean? Nobody's asking you to go against your morals or whatever. I'm on episode 4, I believe, chapter 4. You can just buy the episode. They are giving the comedians a portion of the proceeds, which is basically unheard of. So Comedy Central, I don't know how many views Meth P has, but it's in the millions, and I got $1,000 to film it, and that's it. And that included my travel and shit, and I've never seen another penny. So it is behind a paywall on their website. I linked it on my website just to make it easier to find. And I get a portion of the proceeds. Something like real specific if you just buy the episode, but then also we are all the comedians are cut into a portion of it. So it does benefit me, but no pressure, obviously. But just if you're annoyed about it being behind a paywall, that's the structure. Why. Plus they paid out of pocket to film it, which is like millions. And what else? Something about that. Yeah, I think it may eventually, years down the road, be on Netflix or whatever, but I hope not. Because afterwards I was like, I am kind of glad that the stand-up part of it was not. I did get away with saying a lot of consciousness stuff on that stage, which was fucking sick.
I think it's sick for people that know you as a podcaster first, kind of, and know the complexity of your life and all the consciousness stuff. It's a cool like comedy bit, because it is subtly hidden. There's like a lot of profound ideas and thoughts about consciousness that are like hidden within just a funny extreme story. And so where in a way that like some people aren't going to pick up on those things, they will still think it's funny, but people that are aware, like it's even more funny, because some of those jokes are like only conscious people would understand, really. Yeah,
it's a joke about me going through an awakening, or a story about me going through an awakening while in a mild spiritual psychosis yeah. And like being addicted to meth, which is like really amplifying the psychosis. So on the surface, it's just like, here's something crazy I did. But if you're consciousness aware,
there's all kinds of little hidden Easter eggs. It's so good. Yeah. And that's what I really enjoyed about like watching you do it again and again, is watching different rooms. Some people pick up on those things and some people not. But like, I think that's because you could have just gone in and just like, done a comedy thing that's funny and like would have really gotten a lot of laughs. But like, you're holding this tension of like trying to kind of also poke the bear of people in a way that is like, it makes people think as after they are done listening, you know?
Yeah, when I was a comedian, that's the only thing. Like, there were a couple times where I like would rebrand. I was a mom comic for a while, and there was something that pissed me off about how easy those laughs were to get. I was a recovery comedian for a while, and those laughs were very easy to get. So that would always make me feel like a hack. And so I was just like constantly driven to push the envelope of like, this is actually sad or disturbing, not like edgelord disturbing, because everything I ever did was like autobiographical. So I was always talking about myself, but like, how much childhood trauma can I talk about and you still laugh?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so this was really, you know, and the story was murdering before the pandemic, but it is funny. Comedy just ages really poorly because what makes you laugh is something you haven't thought of before, or it's something that we all experience, but nobody's ever said it before. But comedy has changed so much because people are making TikToks and reels about things that and tweets, and you know what I mean? The internet has started to become the place where those observations or those things take place. So
yeah, so the awareness shifts so quickly in culture where like things aren't as funny when they've become, everybody knows about
everybody
it,
knows them. And there were just
They're
so
played
it just a lot of the story was kind of making fun of the New Age movement in some
Right.
ways that had become oversaturated. Like the idea that aliens were talking to me was wild and new when I was talking about it in 2018, 2019. Now there's 50 people on TikTok doing it. So it's not even that interesting anymore. And so that part was interesting because I didn't have time to rewrite it. I didn't have time to go practice it over and over again like I did with Meth P. And so it was a wild experience. And then I couldn't come back and talk about it on the podcast because had to be a secret until now. By the time it was ready to come out, I was like, oh my God, dude, I've become 50 different people.
Yeah.
Dude. I can't even. It was like, what I will say, man, the makeup ladies did such a good job.
Yeah, you looked hot.
I was very impressed. I did wipe the lipstick off, but yeah, it was an extremely awkward green room experience. And just overall, I was like, not because of anyone else but me. And yeah, I was just by the end was like, whew, yeah, I'm done with this timeline. And so
I'm proud you did it. You put a lot of work into it.
Fare thee well. Yeah. All right. That's it. We'll try to get
more consistent,
more of these out.
I'm feeling good. I think we have a lot to talk about. I think we could have done this for 2 more hours, but
yeah, I think having a set up, we were like tearing down and moving the things everywhere. So me having an office and then right next door to it now is like permanent mics on a couch that's not going to get redone constantly is huge.
We'll eventually get cameras back in here.
Yeah. All right. Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.